My wife, Heather, is the epitome of a trophy wife. We both know it, and we both completely agree with this. We discussed this many times during our time together. Yesterday, things went further. Maybe too far. Perhaps I have crossed the line. I think it's fair to say that Heather is now considered my prostitutotrophy wife by those involved. Maybe I pushed her into something she didn't want, but I think she liked what happened. I'll find out more this morning when she wakes up, and we can talk about it. But for you to fully understand what I'm talking about, I need to tell the whole story. First, let me tell you a little more about both of us. Then I will tell our story, starting from several years ago, before our wedding, until last night. My name is Jack Winters. 2 years ago, I was the king of campus as I was the star quarterback on the state university football team. A career as a professional football player seemed possible until a knee injury in the last game of my junior year ended that dream. Yes, I was able to play my senior year with a repaired knee, but professional football was no longer in my plans. Luckily, I was also a good student and completed my education in finance. I am 6'4" tall, weighing 230 pounds, with a very athletic build, sandy blonde hair, and blue eyes. I must say that others would describe me as tall, strong, and handsome. I'm the guy that other guys hate. I could probably date any girl on campus I wanted. By my senior year, the only girl I had was Heather. Heather Wilson is a stunningly beautiful woman. Her face lights up, her smile is wide, and her emerald green eyes are mesmerizing, all framed by her long, wavy brown hair, a stunning beauty, and her body is even better. She has perfectly formed 36DD breasts, a 26-inch waist, and 36-inch hips with a curvy ass that was the envy of all the other girls. When she walks, all eyes turn to her, and I mean all eyes, not just men's. Heather was a cheerleader at State University, a senior cheerleader for the past 2 years. She has powerful charisma, leadership qualities, and boundless energy. She is what every man wants, and she was my girlfriend. In January of our senior year, football season was over, and I could spend more time focusing on my last semester of college, thinking about my future and how I wanted Heather to always be a part of my life. I have to say that the deciding factor was how incredible sex with her was. I'm a big, strong man trained by professional trainers for great stamina, but when Heather and I had sex, she had more stamina than me. Yes, I knew I had to keep it to myself. One Saturday night, I invited Heather to dinner at one of the most luxurious restaurants in the city. I had a nice diamond ring in my pocket and was ready to propose to her, hoping for a wedding in June, right after graduation. I was wearing trousers, a shirt, and a jacket without a tie. A little casual and a little stylish, that was the look. Heather looked fantastic. Her hair was tied up and bright makeup emphasized her eyes and lips. She wore a simple little black dress that showed off her long, slender legs, ample breasts, and curvy hips and butt. More than once I heard someone whistle as we entered a restaurant. I had previously agreed with the restaurant staff. After dinner, they will bring us glasses of champagne, and in her glass will be my ring. Yes, a little corny, but I heard it works. Dinner went great. We had great food, great wine, and great conversation. We talked about how the school year was going, about our sports activities, about our classes while studying for final exams, and about many of our friends. As I had planned, after dinner the waiter brought glasses of champagne, which surprised Heather. I proposed a toast to our great future. She looked at me with a question in her eyes as we started drinking champagne. When our glasses were half drunk, Heather put her glass down and looked at me. "What's going on here?" she asked. "We're having dinner together," I replied, pretending everything was fine, knowing the moment was close. She looked unsure. She tilted her head to the side and continued to just look at me. "Have some more champagne," I suggested. "You know, you don't have to get me drunk to have sex with me. I'm already planning to spend the night in your bed." Heather was straightforward, to say the least. "This is not just about getting you into my bed tonight," I said, clearly implying that this was serious. "Please have some more champagne. For our future." I raised my glass in another toast. Heather raised her glass and took a longer sip. She froze when she noticed movement inside the glass. Again, she looked at me with a question in her eyes, slowly tilted the glass, and the ring slid to her lips. Holding the ring between her lips, she set the glass down. She took the ring with her fingers and lifted it, examining it closely, and then looked at me. "And what is it?" she asked slowly. "I want you to be a part of my life forever. Heather Wilson, will you honor me by becoming my wife?" I saw a tear in her eyes. Her hand shook as she placed her hands on the table, still holding the ring. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath. We sat in silence for the longest few seconds of my life. Of course she'll say yes, I thought. Why do you need to think about this? Heather took a second deep breath, opened her eyes, and slowly began to speak. Before I say yes, I need to tell you something about myself. What I say may change your mind, and you may want to withdraw your offer. I will completely understand. I was shocked. Before I could protest, she raised her hand to stop me and continued. Please listen to me. This is very important, because in any case, we will both have to live with what I tell you. I leaned back and leaned against the back of the chair. He folded his hands on his knees. I was all ears, but I was sure there was nothing she could say that would change my mind. I fully intended to make her my wife. You know that I love you very much. I want to be your wife. It starts with being completely honest with you. Heather began slowly and deliberately. You know that I love sex, more than you know. You may have heard rumors about me. Most of them are true. I've had sex with a lot of people, like a dozen players on the football team, most of the basketball team, and some on the baseball team. She stopped and looked at me. Indeed, I have heard rumors. I didn't know if they were true or how many sexual partners she had. Heather continued. I also had sex with every member of the cheerleading team, all the boys and all the girls. I had sex with most of the girls on the basketball team, the girls on the volleyball team, and some of the girls on the track team. I'm not as smart as you, Jack. I have trouble doing well in all my classes, especially with all my cheerleading responsibilities. To pass some classes, I had sex with several professors, both men and women. Many people would say that I am a woman of easy virtue, and they would probably be right. I was truly stunned, but somehow, knowing that so many others found her so sexually desirable only made me more determined to make her mine. Are you still having sex with? My voice died down as I began to be embarrassed to ask this question. I haven't slept with anyone else since we started dating at the end of November. Before that, I knew that we were both seeing other people, but when you asked me to be your girlfriend, I stopped sleeping with other men. With other men? I repeated her statement as a question. What about the girls? She paused again, considering her answer. Not that often, but sometimes. Sex with another girl is different. This is not love or emotion. It's just fun, just like cheerleading is fun, water skiing is fun, just like having sex with another girl is fun. I'm with you almost every night, and I really like it. But sometimes I like to play with a girl. You know that cheerleaders often go to away games with the team. Sometimes we stay at a hotel and they put two girls in each room. You were away last Saturday at an away game, I interrupted. Yes, I shared a room and bed with Alexa, Heather replied with a sly smile and a sly glint in her eyes. I had a really good time with her. Now it was my turn to stop and think. I knew Alexa, another one of the cheerleaders. She was also very beautiful and sexy. I knew that if I shared a room with her, I would be in her bed. I couldn't blame Heather for having a little fun. And how much did it harm me? What I'm hearing is that as long as you're with me, you won't have sex with other men, but it sounds like you want to be allowed to have sex with another girl. I wanted to clarify her position on this issue. And do you want this to continue after we get married if you say yes? Yes, I really want to be your wife. I love you very much, and we are really doing well in many ways. I promise to be completely faithful from today and never have sex with another man. Again, she took a deep breath. But I would like to be able to play with one of my friends sometimes. I will always be careful. This conversation was reminiscent of contract negotiations. I believe that every serious relationship involves compromise. She simply had a condition for agreeing to marry me. So will you agree to make me the happiest man on earth by becoming my wife? But I have to let you have sex with other women sometimes. Okay, I have a condition too. I will agree to your sexual encounters with other women, but only if you tell me about these encounters in detail. After all, I am a man, and like most other men, I like to see or hear about X amount of girly sex encounters. Do you agree to my terms? A wide smile appeared on her face. Her eyes lit up. She nodded her head. Yes, Jack Winters, I agree to your terms. I will become your wife. I stood up, leaned across the table, and kissed and hugged my new bride deeply. I took the ring from her hand and put it on her finger. Other diners near our table gave us polite applause. I hope they didn't hear our entire conversation, but only saw me put the ring on her finger. I then whispered in her ear, Today, you are my woman of easy virtue, mine. I want to take you home and make love to you while you tell me everything about what you and Alexa did last Saturday night in the hotel room. Tomorrow morning, we will start planning our wedding because you will be my wife. I paid the bill, thanked the waiters, and we hurried to my apartment. A few minutes later, we were naked in bed. You wanted to hear about how Alexa and I spent last Saturday night, Heather began. For starters, we have a long history. Our freshman year, we both made the cheerleading team and were assigned as dorm roommates. In the first week, we played together and became frequent lovers. Until the first field trip, after Thanksgiving, neither of us had sex with another team member. By the beginning of January of freshman year, Alexa and I had slept with everyone on the cheerleading team. It turned out that as newbies, we were the last to join the team's sexual activities. But my favorite sex with Alexa was always my favorite among the cheerleaders. The head cheerleader assigns couples to hotel rooms at away games. Since I was a head cheerleader the last 2 years, I always shared a room with Alexa. She is the best I know, and I have tried many men and women. Jack, you're good, but you could use a lesson from her. Fucking incredible, I thanked Heather. She raised her head and looked into my eyes. It seems like I have to tell you about my adventures with Alexa every time we have sex. She laid her head back on my shoulder, and we both fell asleep. The next day, we started planning our wedding in earnest. Our last semester of college flew by. Heather moved into my apartment, and we had amazing sex every night. Somehow, we managed to find time to study and plan our wedding. Football season was over for me, and I did not participate in spring sports. Heather still had cheerleading duties, and her team supported spring sports. This also meant away games. As always, she shared a room and bed with Alexa. When Heather returned from these trips, she would tell me all the details of their sex. I also learned that Heather had been telling Alexa about our sex life, which made their sexual encounters even better. I didn't know whether to be angry or happy that everyone wanted my girl. We both graduated from college at the end of May. We found jobs, me as a financial consultant and Heather as an office manager at a large law firm. In fact, her role was more to be a receptionist and an attractive window display. She was gorgeous and the first person visitors saw when entering the law firm, but she loved playing this role. Our wedding took place at the end of June. In addition to family and longtime friends, all of the cheerleaders attended the wedding, as well as many of my football teammates. It was fun to be the center of attention, even though everyone's attention was really on Heather. I was just next to her. I knew who was getting everyone's attention. After our wedding, our lives settled down as one would expect for a young married couple starting new careers. We worked Monday to Friday and went out with friends on the weekends, usually to bars and restaurants in the city center. Most of us lived in apartments, so we didn't have room to invite many friends at once. Heather kept her word and remained faithful to me among men. She and Alexa had monthly girls' nights where they would go out with their girlfriends. On those nights, Heather did not return home. She stayed with Alexa. The next evening, I heard all the details. It was always sexy. Over time, my career took off and sharply upward. After about a year of working as a financial advisor, I was lured away to an investment banking firm. I had a large office, a full-time assistant, and a mid-level salary in 6 significant figures. Life was clearly looking good. Heather and I bought our first house, much more than we actually needed. We'll need some of the extra space when we start having a family. Otherwise, it was a great investment, a great home in a prime area. It had 5 bedrooms, 4.5 bathrooms, 2 living rooms, 2 dining rooms, a media room, and a 3-car garage. I parked the company's black Mercedes at one of the locations and bought a red Mercedes convertible for Heather. She had sex with me all weekend for this gift. Heather quit her job and became a trophy housewife. She had plenty of time for activities such as shopping for clothes, decorating her home, and doing yoga. With our higher income, we went to more expensive restaurants and clubs more often. We dressed to the nines, especially Heather. She looked fantastic in college. Now she was even more incredibly beautiful and attractive. She always walked holding my hand. She was my trophy wife, and we both loved the way she played that role. We received first-class service everywhere we went. The doormen at clubs and restaurants were always attentive when we approached. The Jacks were always quick to deliver our car first and always opened the door for it. For our second wedding anniversary, we went to our favorite expensive restaurant. The food, drinks, and service were impeccable, largely due to Heather's appearance and demeanor. Everyone treated her like a goddess. Between courses, I started a new conversation. "Great dinner tonight, isn't it?" I started. "Wonderful, Jack. This is a really great restaurant," Heather replied. "You know they give us better service because of you, don't you?" "Do you really think so, dear?" she answered. I didn't know if she was naive or just being polite. "I think yes. When I walk in here with you on my arm, people notice. They all behave differently. Sometimes I come here with colleagues for lunch. I am treated like an ordinary person. But when you are with me, there is a noticeable difference." "They always act the same way towards me," she replied, wondering about my logic. "Of course they treat you the same. You are the reason they give us special attention. It's for your sake. You are the epitome of a trophy wife. Do you like this role? Darling, you know what I like? I love dressing up, beautiful clothes, hair and nails, and a lot of makeup. I like it when you and others pay attention to me. Who wouldn't love that? My mom always told me to do what I do best. And I know that this is what I do best. I'm proud to be your trophy wife." "And how do you feel about me showing you to my colleagues and all my friends? You know I love showing you off. When you became my wife, I reached the top of the mountain. Everyone else wants what I have, and I like to show it off. I enjoy it too. Looks, even whistles don't bother me. I like attention, and guys keep courting me, hoping that I'm not completely faithful to you," she laughed. "It makes me happy. I know I'm still a hot, desirable woman. Tell me honestly, do you miss sex with other men? I know you made a great sacrifice for me. We made a deal that I would be faithful with men if you let me see another girl sometimes. I think this part of our agreement works very well." Heather fell silent. I realized that she wanted to say something else, but I tried to get something else out of her. "It's not so much the sex that I miss. We have amazing sex." Heather paused briefly. "I miss flirting, playing, making sexual innuendo with men. I like to play this game where they think they are in control, but I know I can make them do whatever I want. It's an exciting game, and I really miss it." "Is it true?" What she said took me by surprise. "Tell me more." "The simplest example is when I wear more revealing clothes, men think that I am defenseless, and they can take advantage of me. In fact, when I wear less clothes, it gives me more power over them. They begin to think with their body, not their head. I could tell them to jump into the lake, and they would do it instantly. I quickly realized in college that when I wore short skirts and skimpy tops, I had a lot of power. I realized that they thought they had the advantage, but I knew that in reality I had the advantage. The more a man wants a woman, the more power he gives her. But she must be aware of this power and use it. The art of flirting is how a woman wins the game, and I loved playing this game." I sat back in amazement. Wow, I didn't realize that, I said. Oh, Jack, you lost this game with me on the first day we met. I knew I had you on my hook. I enjoyed playing this game with you. You were a big man on campus, but you were completely helpless under my influence. I felt the curtain rise, and I suddenly saw everything. I also felt pretty stupid. I realized in an instant that she was absolutely right in her assessment. Then it dawned on me that when she won, I also won, but in a different way. Our lives were a much more complex dynamic than I realized. But that still left the question of her boredom with flirting. Thank you for opening my eyes. I think I'm comfortable in the knowledge that my trophy wife is actually in control. I see it as a win-win, I said, trying to regain my dignity. Heather gave me a knowing smile. I didn't know if she was admiring my new knowledge or if I should be wary of her next move in the game. I continued, so you want to flirt again, knowing that there will be no sex with men. I have full confidence in my ability to play and win this game, she replied. For me, it's all about playing and winning, not sex as a prize for winning. I have you for great sex. I have a new respect for my wife and her special abilities. I realized that it could be fun to watch her in action, knowing that her actions were very deliberate. So maybe we can set up a situation where you can flirt with a man or several men, I asked. For me, it would be another way to show off my hot, sexy wife and make other guys jealous. After all, I will be the one having sex with her every night, not them. A wide smile appeared on her face. I saw that she liked this idea. I will never do anything that goes against your wishes. But if you allow it, it can be fun and I will reward you later, she said with a playful glint in her eyes. I realized that she had defeated me again, but I could live with it. Later that night, we were home in bed. Honey, were you serious about letting me flirt with other men? She asked with that playful look in her eyes. I think you have an idea, don't you? I answered. The football season will start soon. College games start in a few weeks. You wanted to buy this house because of the large media room. I know you want to invite your friends over to watch the games on your huge TV and sit in those comfy chairs. She was absolutely right. I had a huge 84K HD TV with incredible pictures and a full surround sound system. We purchased some great leather sectionals with custom recliners. It was designed to be a great place to watch live sports, and college football on Saturdays was our favorite. Yes, and your idea? I pushed her to further explain. Heather continued, I could be the hostess, serving snacks or dinner to all the guys and bringing you a cold beer. I could play the role of a flirtatious barmaid. And what would you wear? I asked. Maybe my red-hot shorts, the ones with a low waist and cutouts that show off my butt. Do you like them? And maybe a tight top without a bra, and my platform high heels. They make my legs look very beautiful. I knew exactly what she was describing. I imagined her in this sexy outfit in my thoughts. You like this idea, don't you, darling? You know the guys are going to be excited. We'll have trouble keeping them from groping you. I actually knew my friends and how they would probably react to my hot wife. Do they have to keep their hands to themselves? Heather asked. I wasn't sure if she was being serious or sarcastic. She continued, we agreed no sex. Or is it too far? Heather looked at me with her big puppy dog eyes. She knew I couldn't resist her. Yes, she knows how to use sex as a weapon, and she knows how to win. Fine, it is allowed. Just leave all your clothes in place and no sex. I think I'll enjoy watching you tease and torment my friends, I told her. Teasing men, especially several at once, makes me extremely excited. After they go home, I'm going to have sex with you. I just thought you should know about it so you can be prepared. How can you prepare for this? I asked, not expecting an answer, and I didn't receive it. We invited a few guys to watch a football game on Saturday of Labor Day weekend. There was an important game on TV early in the season. Before our guests arrived, Heather and I were getting dressed up in preparation for the game. Heather was really looking forward to teasing the guys. I was looking forward to showing off my hot wife. Just like we discussed, She put on her hot shorts and tight top. She didn't wear a bra or panties. I knew she wasn't wearing a bra, but I wasn't sure about the lack of panties. I invited 3 of my former teammates to a football tryout. Adam was a wide receiver on the team. He had great hands and was an accurate route runner, but he wasn't tall or fast enough for pro football. Now he sells insurance. Sam was our main runner. He signed with an agent but did not make the cut. He was now coaching the school's football team. Blake was our center back. I thought he was a great player, but apparently not good enough for the professionals. Now he is a co-owner of a fitness club. Heather told me the night I proposed to her that she had sex with several members of the football team. I never asked who exactly. Until today, I really didn't want to discuss the details of her past. But now the situation has changed. I never asked who exactly you had sex with. You said this included several football players. But if you're planning on sexually teasing guys today, I think I need to know which of them had sex with you. They might think you're hitting on them for sex, I tried to say in a firm but worried voice. Adam, Sam, and Blake. Heather paused for a moment as if remembering. All 3 of them, at least once. Remember the end of season party our sophomore year? She stopped again, remembered something, and continued. Oh yeah, you weren't there. This was when you had knee surgery and no one was supposed to know about it. That night I slept with all 3. That was the only time I had sex with Sam and Adam. I'm sure they won't try anything today. What about Blake? Have you been with him more than once? I asked, not knowing how much I really wanted to know. Heather took my hand and invited me to sit on the edge of the bed with her. Apparently, she had a history with Blake. I dated Blake quite often during my sophomore year. If I could rank all the men I had sex with in college, you would definitely be number 1, and Blake would definitely be number 2. I know it's awkward for guys to compare, but I'll tell you that you two are very similar. You easily won my heart for other important reasons. First of all, you are a true gentleman and treat me especially well no matter what we do together. This was, and is, the main reason I married you. Can we go back to our previous conversation? I had one more question. Should I be worried that Blake might misunderstand your intentions today? I can handle him, she replied. He took it hard when you and I became full-time partners, and I told him I wouldn't sleep with him anymore. He was persistent. He approached me one day after we got engaged, hoping for one last sex before the wedding. I told him no, and once again, after we got married, he approached me again for sex. Again, I said no. He can be persistent, but he understands that no means no. Don't be surprised if I tease him more and push his buttons. I'll use our story to play with him, but I won't have sex with him if you don't want me to. You can tease him. It can be fun to watch him squirm. I expect him to be doubly uncomfortable with me in the room and watching. But please leave all your clothes in place and no sex. I kissed her again. I love you so much, and you make me so happy to be my wife. Adam, Sam, and Blake all arrived around 1:30 for pre-match preparation before the game started at 2 o'clock on TV. I met them at the door and led them into the media room. Heather was in the kitchen, finishing up the final preparations for the appetizers and snacks she planned to serve. You have a great house here, Sam remarked, looking around. This was the first visit for all 3 of us to our home. I wish I had the money to make a room like this, Adam added, looking at the huge TV, surround sound system, and comfortable chairs. Heather, our guests are here. Can you get us some beer? I announced loud enough for her to hear me from the kitchen. She deliberately planned this so she could make a dramatic entrance while everyone was looking at her. I was thrilled that she would be on display as my trophy wife. When she walked into the room wearing those short, hot shorts and tight top, all eyes suddenly turned to her. I noticed at least 2 jaws drop. Sam started whistling, then remembered I was there and stopped, embarrassed. It's okay to stare, guys. Heather loves attention. Feel free to express yourself. Today, we're just having fun. After all, none of you will have sex with her except me, I said in a pre-planned statement. I was sure none of the guys knew that I knew that they had all had sex with Heather at least once. Hell, I didn't know this myself until today. Sam, Adam, and Blake all glanced quickly at each other, then at me, then at Heather. It was obvious that everyone was trying to figure out who knew what. Heather just stood there, looking sexy, amazing, holding 5 beers while everyone stared at her. I sat to the side, enjoying their discomfort. Heather was mine, and it was supposed to be fun. Heather began handing out the beer, making a special effort to get closer to each of them as she handed them the cold beer. Everyone looked at her. The mouths were open. She threw out the bait, so to speak, and they were all hooked, hook, line, and sinker. It was amazing to watch her take complete control of the entire room in a short minute. Heather kept the 5th beer for herself, raised it in her hand, and proposed a toast. To a great football season. May the best team win. We all raised our bottles in a toast and then took long sips of our beer. Even Heather seemed to be drinking for a long time. I was sure everyone thought what she meant by, the best team will win. Then she turned and walked back to the kitchen. All men's eyes were glued to her perfect ass. Sam whistled at her again, and she waved in thanks. She's even hotter than I remember. Blake broke the silence. She's really hot, isn't she? I answered. Must be incredible in bed. You're lucky, Adam said. I neither confirm nor deny this, but I go to sleep every night with a big smile on my face, I replied. This got knees slapping and cat-like screams from all the guys. Heather returned with 2 trays of food and placed them on the huge ottoman that doubled as a coffee table. Again, she bent over more than necessary to give a good view of her ass and breasts. Everything was covered, but didn't leave much to the imagination. Eat, guys, she said, turning again and walking away amid more screams and shouts. The guys ate and drank, mostly discussing how incredibly sexy Heather was. We even watched the game a little. They kept asking me about Heather and details of our sex life, but I offered very few facts and a lot of hints. They absorbed it all. From time to time, Heather returned to check on how everyone was doing. Sometimes she would take her beer and pretend to finish the bottle. Then she told everyone, "Drink to the bottom, I'll bring you another beer." And everyone followed her example. Damn, I thought, she really wins the game. She brought more beer and put on a special show for each guy. Every eye remained glued to her body. Again, she proposed a toast and took a long sip of her beer before leaving the room. Apparently, she got drunk faster than anyone else. By halftime, everyone had at least 2 beers, and they were getting rowdier. Sexual innuendo was a constant conversation. Heather participated in all of this, often sitting close to someone. After her final exit to the kitchen, I excused myself and went to check on Heather. "Honey, are you okay?" I asked. I was worried that she might get drunk and lose control. She turned and looked at me. She was completely sober. "I'm fine. Everything is completely under control. I think everything is going according to plan. You'll love the second half." "How? What? You've already drunk 2 beers," I stammered. "Pretty much not a bit, but they don't know that." She lifted her bottle to her lips, tilted it upward, and pretended to drink a good amount. I saw her swallow. She put the bottle down and smiled at me again. "This bottle is still full." She then poured about a third of the beer into the sink. I learned this skill as a cheerleader. Appear to be drinking, act like a drinker, but stay sober and under control at all times. Frequent trips to the kitchen help my beer disappear. I was stunned. She really knew how to pretend to get drunk, but she was completely under control. By the 4th quarter, they will all be very drunk. They may have to stay overnight to get some sleep. But the most interesting things will begin in the 4th quarter. Things will get wild, but don't worry. I'll be under control. Now take this tray of food and take it there. I'll bring you another beer soon. She gave me a quick kiss. I felt as if the curtain had risen again, and I was watching a master puppeteer in action. Shortly after I set the food down and sat down, a slightly drunk Heather entered the room with more beers for everyone, including another one for herself. "Who wants another beer?" she exclaimed loudly. Everyone raised their hands. Heather approached everyone in turn, handing out beer. To Adam, Sam, and me, she demanded a kiss before handing over the bottle. We all paid this price willingly. Blake got the last beer. Kiss for the beer, she told Blake, who was happy to oblige. She somehow tripped, turned, and fell again. Oh, sorry. Didn't I hurt you? She said, holding the position a little longer before pulling away from him. I noticed her wink at me as she stepped back, and Blake had the most contented smile I've ever seen on his face. Towards the end of the third quarter, Heather brought another round of beer. She stumbled, and her words were slightly incomprehensible, but I knew it was all a game. Who else wants a beer? She repeated the same thing for Blake, Sam, and then me. Finally back on her feet, with her own beer in hand, Heather rushed towards the bathroom, saying, "Too much beer for me. Gotta go to the bathroom." We all laughed out loud. Heather started the game and earned big points. "Damn, she's naughty," Blake exclaimed. "You let her do this shit?" Adam asked in disbelief. Sam just stared in a drunken stupor with a smile on his face. I replied, "Heather and I decided to relax and hope everyone has fun. Is everyone having fun?" They all nodded or waved indifferently. "She's kissed some of our best friends like that. She's kissed all of you before." Everyone nodded and muttered in agreement. "I told her she couldn't have sex with anyone today. She didn't do that, did she?" Everyone shook their heads in denial. Then let the party continue. We all raised our bottles in another toast and drank more beer. Later, at the end of the game, Heather returned to the room, walked over to the TV, and stared at the screen. "Who scored more?" she demanded to know. In fact, the game has already become a disaster and has lost our interest. When she found out, she turned to everyone and announced, "It seems I must provide entertainment. Honey, turn up the music louder." I knew in advance that this could happen, so I held the remote in my hands and switched the audio to club dance music. Heather is a great dancer, and she immediately started squirming to the music. The guys went crazy, whistling, screaming, and slapping their legs. Heather danced for the group, showing off her moves and seductive curves, still covered by her revealing clothing. Her high leg lift and hold, her specialty in cheerleading where she stood on one leg and held the other leg above her head while straining the fabric of her shorts, was very popular. She seemed quite drunk and very excited about the performance. All the guys believed in it. Finally, she returned to the center of the room and began what appeared to be a strip dance. Slowly, to the music, she moved, raising the hem of her blouse to her chest. Suddenly, she froze and turned to me. "Oh, you told me not to show anything, didn't you?" Before I could answer, she turned to the others and asked loudly, "Who wants to see my breasts?" Blake, Sam, and Adam all answered loudly in the affirmative. Heather walked closer to the three and quickly lifted her top and exposed her breasts to them. The guys screamed even louder. Heather looked at me with a silent request for forgiveness and lowered her cardigan again. "More, we want to see more." There was a chorus of applause from the guys. "I'm already in trouble. I have to go," she announced, and then ran out of the room, up to our bedroom. The guys all groaned as the show and their fun ended. The football game was also over. I don't remember the final score, but I know that Heather scored all the points in our media room. It's time for the guys to leave. Blake took out his phone and called an Uber to take the three home. As soon as the guys left, I ran upstairs. Entering our bedroom, I felt strong impulses. When I entered the room, we made love. The next day, we discussed at length the events of the previous day. I was in awe of her ability to control the actions of four mostly drunk men for almost 4 hours. Her ability to pretend that she is drinking beer from a bottle, to act drunk and slutty, while being completely sober and controlling every action, every touch, every reaction. From her point of view, everything went very well. She teased, played, made three guys nervous, and held them with minimal effort. Her bare breasts at the end were a bonus for them, as they were so easy to control. She hoped I wasn't mad about it, and I wasn't. Technically, it was within our established boundaries. She never took off her top or any other piece of clothing, and she didn't have sex with anyone but me. We rated our efforts at least a B+. Hosting the boys at our house on Saturdays to watch college football and watch my trophy wife become a regular event. As word of additional entertainment spread, more people quickly agreed to our invitation. We kept the number of guests between 4 and 6. Blake was the only regular guest. Others came some weeks and others for different reasons. Every week, Heather told me which guy she had sex with and under what circumstances. Some of our guests have never been with her. They became the best players in Heather's game as she teased them sexually. And I'm pretty sure no one ever knew that she didn't actually drink or get drunk. She played her role very well. Blake has always been very good at the game. He understood boundaries. He was persistent in checking them, but not in a way that Heather couldn't stop him. I think he really enjoyed the game every week and almost became a spectator like me, watching Heather manipulate all the men. About halfway through the season, the game changed. Heather came to me midweek and asked me a simple, but not so simple question. "What is sex?" she asked. "Well, sex is sex. You know," I answered too casually and too quickly. Now I understand where this could be going. She wanted to change boundaries. I answered her, "Do you want me to allow this? Would you be comfortable if I did this during one of our game viewing parties?" She answered my question with a question. I had to think about this for a while. I figured it couldn't do much harm since it would be in front of others, including me. This will not be a private moment with another man. I think I can take it. The question is, will you be okay with this? Heather was straightforward again. I had to think about this for a while. This was a test of my boundaries. "Heather, I honestly have mixed feelings about this. I'm not sure how I'd feel watching another man indulge in more with you. May I suggest allowing it for a few weeks, and I think then I can tell if this is going beyond my boundaries." "Thank you, darling. I love you so much," she exclaimed, hugging me. As a result of this discussion, our Saturday night football watching parties became a little more frank. It didn't happen right away. Heather controlled when new boundaries would be crossed. She wanted it to feel like a slow, natural progression for our guests. But she always controlled the boundaries. She changed her clothes. The tight top was replaced by a cropped t-shirt that barely covered the bottom of her breasts. Her breasts were easily accessible and revealed when you ran your hand under the open bottom of her short shirt. The hot pants were replaced with a very short pleated skirt that barely covered her crotch and only covered her butt when she stood up straight. I insisted that she wear panties, so she wore a small sheer thong that left very little to the imagination, and she no longer played the role of a drunk. She drank very little and simply played the role of a sexy, erotic mistress. As our football watching parties got wilder, I had a lot of guys asking if they could come. Heather and I limited the number of guests to 6 each time, and we decided to stick with that number. It was a manageable group, and everyone had fun. We felt that if there were more guys, the time she spent with each of them would be too little. I found myself somehow okay with men playing with her so sexually. I enjoyed watching her perform and how she turned guys on. Heather and I knew that they all wanted to have sex with her. Many of them had already done this in college. But now I was the only one who had this pleasure. And after every football game, after all the guys had left, I had the best sex with my wife. The thrill of being an object of desire and a toy for guys made her incredibly sexy. Temporary rules, loosened borders, became permanent. Life was good, very good. The college football regular season ended in December. After the conference championship weekend, it was difficult to have game watching parties every week. My friends asked us to host NFL game watch parties on Sundays. They wanted to continue these entertainments. I told them we would think about it, but made no promises about these games. For college football, our plan was to have a watch party for one of the early bowl games and then skip Christmas weekend. Our last Saturday game viewing party was scheduled to take place in late December to coincide with the national championship semifinals, 2 critical games on the same day. All season, we've been limiting our parties to one big game in the afternoon, but I started thinking about hosting a double watch party. I discussed this with Heather. She thought about it and said, "I'm not sure I can handle it. Maybe if you have sex with me between games, everything will be okay. Otherwise, I'll probably start having sex with one or more guys." "I'll think about these options. We have a couple of weeks to make a decision," I replied. It was a vague answer that left her wondering what I really thought. In fact, I wasn't sure myself. This uncertainty was cleared up when the next day, Heather's once-a-month friend Alex called me and asked me to meet for lunch. I had a free lunch break, so we agreed to meet. I'd known Alex since college and was fully aware of her relationship with Heather, but we hadn't seen each other in a couple of years. "Hi, Alex. Long time no see. You look great," I greeted her at the restaurant. She looked better than ever. It seemed like hot college girls got even hotter with a couple years of maturity. Alex hugged me and kissed me. "Hey, Jack. You look great too." After some chatting, Alex moved on to the main reason for our meeting. "Jack, I really want to thank you for being such a loving and supportive husband to Heather. Not many men would be so confident in their relationship as to allow their wife to pursue a relationship with a female mistress." I laughed, remembering the night I proposed to Heather, and she insisted on being able to continue her relationship with Alex on the side. "You probably know that Heather insisted on continuing your relationship as a condition of agreeing to marry me. I believe that your relationship has made our lives better. I have you to thank." "You may have noticed that Heather was happier than she had been in months," Alex began. "I really admire you for letting her play the role of special hostess for your friends every Saturday. The sexier it gets, the happier she is. When she tells me all the details, she can barely contain her delight. She's really getting very wild. Setting boundaries has been a challenge to balance the guy's desires, her desires, and how much of her sexual play with other men I can accept. I think I've been very generous, especially since we've relaxed some rules in recent weeks. That's exactly what I wanted to talk to you about. I know that your next party in 2 weeks will probably be the last of the season. You're thinking about doing a double watch, 2 games in a row." I nodded in agreement, but was very curious where she was going with this. Alex continued, "I have a few ideas, a few suggestions to make this party especially memorable. Perhaps one for the ages." "I'm listening to it." "First of all, if you're going to be watching 2 games, you'll need 2 special hostesses for your party. And I'm willing to be the second hostess." Alex smiled as she presented her idea. It actually made a lot of sense. If she's willing to play a role like Heather does, I knew the guys would love it. "Are you aware of how intimate Heather's relationships become with our guests?" I asked. "Absolutely. She told me all the details. I can say with confidence that all the guests would be delighted to have a second special hostess, especially one as beautiful as you." "Oh, thank you. That's so nice of you. Heather said you only invite 6 friends to each party. Have you picked out a list for the last party yet?" Alex asked. "Blake is our only regular guest. He's a good friend, and he has a history with Heather. That's why he's always invited. Adam and Sam were at our first party, and I want to invite them to the last one. I haven't decided on the other 3 yet." "Could I suggest inviting Mark, Chad, and Vince to your last party of the year, in addition to Blake, Adam, and Sam? It's funny you use the term end of season. That day will be the 4th anniversary of our 3rd-year end of season party. I know you weren't there, but I assume you heard about it." Heather told me something. I know Blake, Sam, and Adam were at that party, and she had sex with all 3 of them. We invited Mark and Chad to our parties. Heather told me she had sex with them alone once, but didn't say when. And I know Vince from the team, but he wasn't at one of our parties. And I don't know if Heather has a history with him. I suspected that Alex knew more than she told me. "Why them?" I asked. Alex was silent for a moment. "I think it's okay to tell you. At that party 4 years ago, I slept with all of them. The only time I ever did that. And I will remember that day fondly for the rest of my life." Alex smiled, remembering. Wow, I thought. And to think that I could have been at that party, if it hadn't been for knee surgery. And I have one more suggestion, one big request. For this one party, can you loosen the rules for Heather? Loosen the rules? How? She held back because it was one of our specific boundaries. No rules, total freedom of action, total sex for all of us, Alex blurted out. I was stunned. Alex asked that my wife have free reign with 6 other men. Alex took a breath and continued. That evening 4 years ago was very special for both of us. She and I often talked about that evening and wondered if we could ever experience it again. Something like, this chance is the closest we'll ever get. I know she really wants this, but she loves you too much to even think about it. But if you let it happen, she will love you even more. And I know that she already loves you immensely. Damn it. Alex asked me to throw a sex party with 6 men, 7 if you count me, with the participation of 2 women, one of whom is my wife. I need to think about this. And one more thing. I want the relaxed rules to be a surprise, Alex added. We'll let her know in advance that I'll be there as a co-hostess, but the relaxed rules and sex will be a surprise to her and everyone else. And if things go badly for Heather, my marriage could be ruined. I expressed my main concern. I guarantee that everything will be fine. I know that she really wants this. Alex was absolutely sure. And if I agree and we keep it a secret from her, how will she know that she can do whatever she wants? That's another reason I'll be there. I'll take the lead. She'll either follow me or look to you for approval. All you have to do is make sure she knows you approve. The next day, after considerable consideration, I called Alex and agreed with her plan in full. Alex said she would call Heather and offer to co-host our last party of the season. Alex and I will keep our conversation a secret from Heather. She won't have the slightest idea what we have planned. I had a lot of concerns about the party and all the ways it could go wrong. But if Alex was right, and I truly trusted her to know Heather's deepest desires, then our party truly would be one to remember for the ages. And maybe Heather will love me even more than I thought possible. Later that week, a few days before Christmas, Heather mentioned that Alex had spoken to her and offered to co-host our last party. Heather hoped it was okay for her to accept Alex's proposal without consulting me. I told her it was wonderful. It will be fun with the second owner. The guys will be delighted. Heather also asked me if I knew who I was planning to invite. I lied and said that I hadn't completely decided yet. I think this was true since I hadn't invited anyone yet, and the list might change. Heather said that I should tell her before the guests arrived at the party, as I always did, and she would tell me what sexual history she had with each of them, if any. I smiled and thanked her with a kiss. The day of the big party has finally arrived. Heather and I were excited. Our last party of the season and double watching the games. I was pretty sure Heather had no idea what Alex and I had planned. It was exciting and a little scary, but my thoughts were, no risk, no reward. Darling, I forgot to ask, who is coming today? Heather asked as we got dressed. I put on my regular trousers and an open-collared shirt. Heather wore her white crop top with a very short blue denim skirt and a very small sheer thong. Oh yeah, sorry. I forgot to tell you too. I invited Blake. He's always invited. I invited Adam and Sam. They were at our first party. I thought it was only right to invite them to the last one. I agree. Good choice. Who else? Heather continued to ask. I invited Mark and Chad. They've both been here before, once each, in different weeks, if I remember correctly. Heather thought for a moment, as if putting together the pieces of a puzzle in her head. Yes, Mark was at the end of October, right after we changed our rules, and Chad was at the beginning of November. If you remember, I told you that they were my conquests too. Of course, I remembered, and I remembered that she didn't say when exactly she had sex with them. The last invitee is new to our parties. You remember our team's defensive star, Vince, don't you? He'll be there too. As soon as I mentioned Vince's name, Heather's eyes widened for a moment. I realized that she was remembering that party 4 years ago. I hoped that she didn't know that I knew about the connection between these six. Oh yeah, Heather's voice faltered a little. I remember Vince. And yes, he is also one of those football players I slept with once. It's not a problem, right? I hugged Heather and kissed her. Your sexual history with these guys has never been a problem for me. Yes, it helps to know and be prepared for people who might misunderstand your actions. But we haven't had any problems, or at least none that I couldn't handle. The doorbell rang. It was 3 hours before the party started. This is Alex, Heather said. She'll arrive early to help with the food, and we'll do our hair and makeup together. Kindly let her in and tell her to come up to my place. I'll get to that. Then I'll get the ice for the drinks. I hurried downstairs and opened the door. Alex stood there in jeans and a coat. The weather was a little cool. In her hands were several bags of food and a bag, probably containing cosmetics and hair products. Hi, Jack. Remember me? Alex said loudly so Heather might have heard it. It was part of our cover that we had not seen each other for several years. Come in, Alex. It's good to see you again. Heather is waiting for you, and thanks for offering to help us. I winked at her and hugged her when she came in. He closed the door behind her. Let me take your coat and hang it in the closet, I said, adding to the cover. I'll take the rest of the bags to the kitchen. I took her coat and hung it in the closet. Alex picked up her bag and headed upstairs to see Heather. Then I started placing beer and ice in various refrigerators. A few minutes later, the girls appeared in the kitchen. Alex changed into an outfit almost identical to Heather's. She was wearing a cropped dark blue t-shirt that ended just below her breasts and a very short white denim skirt that barely covered her butt and private parts. I assumed there were panties or a thong underneath the skirt. I think I'll find out soon enough. Alex was slightly shorter than Heather, with blonde hair, blue eyes, and what I would describe as a sexy, athletic body. Her breasts weren't as big as Heather's, probably a C-cup. Overall, they were amazing. We'll do our hair and makeup later, before the party. Now, we'll prepare food for you hungry guys. We all worked together in the kitchen. I continued to stock beer and ice in the various coolers while the girls worked on preparing snacks. I had a special feeling about this evening. 2 hours before the guys arrived, the girls went upstairs to get their hair and makeup done. I finished my preparations and went to the media room to watch the pre-match broadcast. Soon the guys started coming. The first, as usual, was Blake. He immediately headed to the kitchen for beer. He knew the routine. Heather would appear after everyone had arrived, but he was unaware of Alex's presence. Within 15 minutes, the others arrived. Mark, Sam, Chad, Adam, and finally Vince. Everyone sat down to watch the end of the pre-match show on TV. Vince was impressed with our home and especially the media room. Our media room was large enough to accommodate a sofa in a large arc of 7 sections. We added a second ottoman, each about 2 feet wide and 3 feet long, that served as both a footstool and a coffee table for snacks. As usual, I sat at the far end, closer to the kitchen, so that I could help if necessary. Soon the football game started and the girls broke away from the boys. We need to get food, Heather said as she and Alexa returned to the kitchen to a chorus of whistles, shouts, and cries of "Don't leave" and "Come back now" from some guys. The girls lingered in the kitchen, which allowed the guys to calm down a little and concentrate on watching the football match. It was obvious that this delay was a deliberate ploy by the girls to control the intensity of sexual tension in the group of guys. Yes, the 2 girls were firmly in control, at least for the moment. "Who wants something to eat?" Alexa announced as she and Heather returned with trays of food, which they placed on 2 ottomans in front of the guys. "Buffalo wings," one of them exclaimed. "I want those nachos," shouted another. "I want to eat Alexa," said the third with a devilish look. "And I'm sure Heather tastes better," said another. "But to find out, I'll have to eat them both." All the guys laughed loudly. Heather stood in front of the guy and shook her finger at him. "No, no, no." "That's not going to happen," Blake added. "You know the rules." And then he took a bite of the wing. The guys were busy eating food, drinking beer, and kept making lewd comments about what they wanted to do with Heather and Alexa. The girls played on it but remained in control. Everyone was having a great time. Heather and Alexa took a break in the kitchen again. The sexual temperature cooled down again as the guys ate, drank, and watched the game. Chad asked Alexa, "Are you going to dance with Heather at halftime?" This is always one of the main features of the party. "Oh yeah, I'll dance too," Alexa replied loud enough for everyone to hear. "But we will provide entertainment between two football games, not at halftime." This announcement brought a mixture of cheers that Alexa would be dancing too, and some dissatisfaction that the guys would have to wait until the end of the first football game. After playing with the guys, the girls collected all the empty bottles into buckets and went back to the kitchen. I collected the empty trays of food and followed them into the kitchen to offer my help and express my gratitude. "You're both great," I said. "You're having a party. I could put a soap opera on TV and they wouldn't notice." The last part was an exaggeration, as the guys would probably notice as soon as the girls left the room. "Thank you, Jack," my wife said, kissing me. "Yes, thank you. We appreciate the compliment," Alexa said before kissing me, lingering a little longer. I looked at Heather and she smiled back at me. "You both are great at managing guys. I watch carefully as you light the fire and then leave the room to let them cool. Your timing is perfect. But the evening is still young. It's not halftime of the first game yet. Will you be able to maintain control until the end of the day?" "Maybe, maybe not," Alexa answered with a laugh and a sparkle in her eyes. Heather quickly turned to her friend, clearly questioning her answer. "I'll leave you to deal with this. I'll go back to watch the end of the first half," I said, quickly leaving. Heather and Alexa continued this cycle. By the fourth quarter, the outcome of the football game was already decided. The boys were losing interest in the game and just wanted it to end so they could move on to our special home entertainment. Heather and Alexa had a plan to get their audience up before they began their dance. What took me by surprise was when Alexa walked up to me. I have not been a part of such games at our parties before, but I didn't complain about the attention. I noticed that the game on the TV had ended. I may have been the only one who noticed it. Alexa asked me to turn on the music. She gave me songs on a USB drive for their dance routine, but I didn't really check the names of the tunes. Alexa just insisted that I play them in order. When the music started, Heather and Alexa walked to the center of the room and began to dance. All the guys shouted joyfully that the dance had begun. But this party was different, and I decided to keep up with the changes. I would describe the first few numbers as club dance music. By the third song, the girls focused more on each other. The guys loved it. The fourth number was a nude dance, which surprised me a little. Judging by the look Heather gave Alexa, this also surprised Heather. Heather played along with her and repeated her actions. The guys were going crazy. My first thought was that the party was getting out of control. We've never gotten this far. But then I remembered Alexa's words and thought that this was what she and Heather wanted. It was still under their control. I decided to play along because it could be a lot of fun. But I kept a close eye on Heather in case she was scared or panicked. I was ready to intervene and get her to safety. Again, the cry went, "Take everything off, take everything off, take everything off." We all had sex. I realized that the second football game was over. "Who won the game?" I asked. "We won," was the answer from one of the guys. I wasn't sure how to interpret this, but I thought I understood what he meant. In the end, all the guys got dressed and left. Each of them said it was the best football watching party ever, and no one could wait for the next season. Some people tried to get Heather and I to host NFL playoff watch parties, but there was no commitment. Heather and I invited Alexei to stay the night. She was unable to drive home. I carried her to the guest bedroom and put her to bed. I also brought 2 bottles of water along with some aspirins and placed them on the nightstand. She fell asleep before I closed the door on my way out. I also carried Heather to our bedroom and put her to bed. Then I slid next to her and we both fell asleep. The next morning, I sat at the kitchen table, drinking coffee and thinking about the events of the previous night. Have I gone too far? Did I force Heather to do more than she wanted? Was I so caught up in impressing my friends and showing off my sexy trophy wife that I let them all have sex together? Did she want all this? Or did she just do it to please me? I knew that the events of the previous night had taken a toll on Heather and Alexa's physical strength. I expected them both to sleep until noon or later, and indeed they did. At about 1 o'clock in the afternoon, they entered the kitchen together. They both wore my old t-shirts. Their hair and makeup were a mess. I jumped up and helped each of them sit down at the table. Heather wanted juice, Alexa wanted water, and both hotels aspirin from Hertz. Honey, I'm sorry about yesterday. I got carried away trying to please my friends and show off my trophy wife. Things wouldn't have gotten this far if Alexa hadn't called and asked me to lift all your restrictions at our last party. I wasn't sure if I was blaming Alexa or giving her credit. Alexa turned to Heather. Heather smiled, looked at me with a sparkle in her eyes, and said, "Maybe someone told Alexa to call you and convince you to lift my restrictions." It immediately dawned on me what she meant. My wife planned this all from the beginning. I sat there in shock when Alexa spoke. Heather and I discussed other plans this morning. We will have the same one with you, and soon. But that will be another story for another day. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think. Click to the next one. Click to the next one. Click to the next one. Click to